The Hornet stands as one of the most capable multi-role combat aircraft ever produced. In Australian service, it operates exclusively in a land-based role, mirrored by nearly all of its international users.
Evolved from the F-18 Cobra, the Hornet had the characteristics of a lightweight fighter, albeit in a larger, more robust Navy platform. Yet, in the late 70s, Northrop would attempt a radical redesign of the Hornet, with lessons learned from the Cobra. A lighter, faster, and more agile variant tailored specifically for Air Force requirements. Designated the F-18L, this concept represented a focused attempt to strip away the compromises inherent in carrier capability and optimize the platform purely for land-based performance.
Despite its technical promise, the F-18L never progressed beyond proposal stage. It remains a largely overlooked footnote in aviation history. But with the benefit of hindsight, it's difficult to avoid the conclusion that it may have been a remarkably sound idea. This video has been made possible by our members, keeping us independent. Visit peacemaker.net.au.
In 1974, Northrop competed in the lightweight fighter program, ultimately losing out to the F-16 concept. Its own submission, the YF-17 Cobra, was inspired by the evolution of the F-5 Tiger II. In practice, it was a good design, affordable, easy to maintain, and with great potential for one-circle fighting. With a solid core design, the Cobra would continue to evolve. As most are aware, in 1975, Northrop redirected attention towards a low-cost carrier-capable fighter, using the same high-low complementary approach as the Air Force's Eagle and Viper pairing. The Cobra would be the basis. With far more experience with carrier aircraft under their belt, McDonnell Douglas would sign a teaming deal with Northrop in 1975. Together, they would collaborate on the new project, the Hornet. Critically, the contract would split responsibilities between the two companies. Northrop would focus on specific parts of the fuselage, such as the vertical fins. One crucial detail that would later become contentious was that McDonnell Douglas would be the prime contractor for any Navy-specific airframes. Northrop interpreted the agreement as allowing it to market a land-based derivative. Even without a contract for the original Cobra, Northrop knew that the Hornet had great capabilities as a land-based fighter. In 1975, a proposal was put forward for a land-based Hornet, the F-18L. In essence, it would be similar to the A model, but stripped back as much as possible, dropping all unnecessary Navy spec components while keeping the same internal systems and airframe. As part of the teaming deal, it would be a Northrop project. On paper, there were many potential customers, especially close allies such as Australia, Canada, and West Germany. For Northrop, the concept was more realistic and attractive than the Cobra. It offered more in a similarly sized package, with no significant drawbacks. What's more, a focus on multirole was an increasingly necessary selling point, both domestically and in the export market. At home, most bases were already covered. The F-16 filled the low-cost, lightweight fighter class so well that it was fruitless to ever re-enter competition with it. The F-15, as a frontline fighter, simply couldn't be matched. Outside its obvious advantage as a Navy platform, the Hornet could find a niche as a lower-cost, easily maintainable multi-role platform, something akin to a modernized F-5. But convincing a service branch to buy it would be hard. In the export market, the story was similar, albeit with better prospects. Since the 1960s, Northrop's most notable success had been the F-5. From Europe to Asia to the Middle East, it had successfully filled a niche market that higher-cost platforms simply couldn't enter. This market had otherwise been filled by the Soviets, who, thanks to state-owned manufacturing, could undercut the US on sales prices, or by France, which offered aircraft both outside the Western sphere and without the typical strings attached. The F-5 was therefore important in filling a particular low-cost, high-performance gap, yet France and the Soviets would not stop competing for this market. Thus, introducing a new American platform to compete in this market was a smart geopolitical choice. The F-5 had been sold as a lightweight fighter, but in practice, foreign militaries used it for just about everything. In like manner, while the Cobra had been envisioned as the spiritual successor to the Freedom Fighter and Tiger II, from a utilitarian perspective, the multirole Hornet was far closer to what F-5 customers actually wanted. The primary competitor remained the Viper. Yet in the Hornet, Northrop now held a new advantage. While the Viper was being pushed as a lightweight fighter, the Hornet was to be a multi-role platform off the shelf. What's more, with a better radar and Sparrow integration for long-range engagements and superior low-speed agility, it could still try for the same market that the F-16 was aimed at. With a solid idea in hand, a marketing push ensued, and Northrop brought together a dedicated team for the F-18L around 1977. Drawings and detail sheets of the aircraft indicated it was a heavy lifter, capable of carrying an array of air-to-air and air-to-ground weapons. Marketing brochures and aviation magazine articles claimed that the Northrop design would outperform the Navy model in most respects, with one explicitly citing a distinct advantage in turn rate, payload, range, acceleration, and maintenance and operating costs. Another notes an external load capacity of 20,000 pounds across 11 hard points. One brochure also notes a twin-seat model would be on offer. Presumably this would be a trainer, although it seems to infer that it would be combat-ready. The aircraft would boast strong parts commonality with the Navy model, with one brochure claiming it at 95%. It would use the same ANAPG-65 radar, the same engines, the same internal systems, and an almost identical airframe, save for several small but crucial alterations. Outwardly, the leading edge would look slightly different. The carrier spec hook would be replaced with a lightweight emergency hook. The front gear would be stripped of carrier launch components and replaced with a lightweight oleo strut. And the heavier folding wing would be replaced with a fixed wing, with a further outboard pylon added to each. It was claimed to weigh around 20,400 pounds, as opposed to the F-18A's 23,000 pounds, while some structural changes were supposedly added. Other images show a slightly different leading edge extension and wing, smoother, and somewhat like that on the Cobra.
A large-scale mock-up was built alongside smaller models to demonstrate payload capacity. Large mock-ups, supposedly presented in person to prospective customers, was shown armed with sidewinders, Sparrows on the wingtips, external inboard tanks, and what appears to be 16 Mark 20s mounted 6 to a pylon on BRU-41 racks. Presumably, this could also be done on the inboard pylons holding the tanks.
Other smaller mock-ups and illustrations showed additional configurations, some with various pods, guided and unguided bombs, and Mavericks. One small-scale model showed 4 Mark 82s on an inline pylon, with pods on the port and starboard fuselage mounting points. On each wing, moving outward, there was a fuel tank, a GBU-10, twin Mark 82s on a rack, and clean wingtips. While these loadouts were probably maximum capacity showcases, what is notable is that Northrop evidently wanted to outdo the carrier version by featuring Sparrow integration on the wingtip pylon, which would presumably be expanded to the AMRAAM later. What's more, not only would the few thousand pounds of weight saving allow for more stores, but the restructured wing would too. While details on air-to-air loadouts are scarce, we can presume it would have performed on a similar footing to the F-16, likely with a slower top speed due to its shaping, but with superior high AOA performance and nose authority at low speeds, making it a great one-circle fighter. The Hornet, in its modern form, still does this better than the Viper at the right speeds. What's more, it has since been claimed, though without certainty, that the F-18L was to be rated for 9G, which seems plausible given the altered wing and reduced weight. Everything looked good on paper. There was interest in the export market. In fact, the earliest prospective customer, Iran, had been keen on the design since it was first proposed as a hypothetical in 1975. In September 1976, following Tom Jones's visit to Tehran, Iran formally requested the purchase of 250 of the new L models, including an $8 million investment to accelerate R&D, with the total acquisition cost around $4 billion. The US Navy supported the endeavor, as it would drive down the Hornet's price as the market expanded. However, government support was limited.
A National Security Affairs memorandum to President Ford, dated October 1976, stated that no American service branch had shown interest. The development would cost $300 million and that the DoD would review it only after an Iran master plan for the project had been drawn up with sufficient data. To help pay the $4 billion acquisition price, The Iranians had supposedly offered an oil for arms deal, which the US government doubted would come to fruition.
Finally, in 1977, the Carter administration's restrictions came into effect. Iran, in particular, was an odd case. It was a high-priority ally in the region. But the Shah's ambition to field not only Tomcats, but also a huge fleet of Vipers and Hornets would have given it such dominance, even with a down-rated fleet, that it was deemed a possible national security risk. While the DoD suggested the deal might be possible in the future, it was off the table thereafter. Contentions soon arose between Northrop and McDonnell Douglas, with Northrop filing a lawsuit in 1979. It alleged breaches of their 1975 teaming agreement and contract. It was alleged that McDonnell Douglas had interfered with foreign sales and that proprietary technology had been misappropriated in the F-18L to compete with Northrop's own design. It was also claimed that McDonnell Douglas deliberately delayed the joint Hornet project to push the F-15 to market first. McDonnell Douglas would counter the claims with a countersuit, alleging that Northrop breached the contract and used Hornet components in the F-20 Tiger Shark. While it remains unclear exactly what was happening behind the scenes, the lawsuit would trigger a major restructuring of the program. The litigation would take almost 6 years, with the case dragged out, and a final settlement occurring on April 8, 1985. The outcome was significant. After McDonnell Douglas paid $50 million to Northrop, the agreement was officially restructured, allowing McDonnell Douglas to sell the F-18 whenever it wanted. And, as the undisputed prime contractor for the platform, not only in the Alpha configuration, but in all variants. During this period, Hornet production continued, yet the fate of the F-18L was effectively sealed, with Canada's purchase serving as the exemplary case. In a rare instance, both Northrop and McDonnell Douglas had presented competing Hornets. In 1978, Northrop had demonstrated the Cobra to Canada, painted up as a so-called CF-18L, but hesitation persisted. Ultimately, the F-18L was rejected in 1980, with Canada opting for a slightly modified derivative of the carrier model. As time went on, even the feasibility of the aircraft came under scrutiny. In just a few years, the landscape had changed dramatically. In the late 70s, Northrop had a distinct advantage in the export market thanks to the Carter restrictions. Now, these restrictions had been overturned, and the F-16 was selling both as a dedicated fighter platform and as a modern equivalent to the F-5. It remains a mystery how well the F-18L would have performed. The marketing material's allusions to a twin-seat model, possibly inspired by the Tomcat or the IAF's use of the F-15B, suggest it was an ambitious multi-role platform. The RAAF might have bought it if it had been built, and we can assume other nations in Europe may have as well. Even by inference, it would likely have been impressive. The Hornet's high AOA performance was unheard of for its time, and on a lighter platform with better thrust to weight, this could have made it an even closer rival to the Viper, all in a multi-role platform.
While Northrop would redirect its attention towards the F-20 as a lightweight multi-role platform, in the final analysis, its vision for a land-based Hornet was not misplaced. Today, most operators use it primarily as a land-based platform.
Thanks for watching. Our videos are researched, written and produced by a small team of filmmakers dedicated to bringing you accurate military aviation history from around the world. Please consider supporting us by joining our merch and members site for early access, bonus content and merch discounts, or become a YouTube channel member for early access, or simply hit subscribe. Your support means everything.